Hello and welcome back. It's me, your friendly neighborhood college counselor, and today we're very excited to get a little bit into the nitty-gritties of what it takes to get into the Ivy League universities and the different components on which you are going to be assessed as a candidate. Later on in this video, we will be talking about the different parameters along which universities evaluate whether you will be a successful student on their campus. That includes academics, extracurriculars, your personal qualities, and your athletic abilities. Before we get into that, however, I think I want us to remember who it is that we're actually speaking to when we are composing an application. So a lot of us have put so much thought into what we want to put on our application, how we're going to best represent our brand to the universities. Have we ever thought about who is actually on the other side of the curtain? Are they just machines that are just scanning our application? Is it going to be AI just making decisions about my future? Or are they real people with real life experiences who are just sitting here trying to make the best decision for their university and for you, right? So before we jump into things, let's actually think about this persona that we're trying to cater towards. Have you ever imagined who it is that is sitting on the other side of the university admissions committee? A lot of us might imagine an old white man in a frumpy blazer with elbow pads, maybe a monocle, right? And he has a severe look on his face, right? And he's going through your application, circling mistakes, and with his red pen, sort of finding reasons to reject you. And the reality is actually so far from what we imagine that scary person to be like. They're actually kind of just like us. They're young people in their 20s and 30s who are passionate about education, who have probably studied the humanities in college, who just want to make the best future for young people around the world and give young people opportunities. They are from a diverse array of backgrounds. They are a variety of different races, ethnicities, religions. They are from different socioeconomic levels, right? And they all have their own personal biases as well, right? So, of course, they're human beings. One person might come from a family of first-generation immigrants. So when they're reading applications, they're going to resonate with someone's story who is, talking about their own family's immigration story. Or perhaps another AO is a woman of color, and she reads the really touching story of an applicant who has dealt with struggles with her own identity as a person of color, with her gender, etc. So the idea is to really lean into your authentic identity and hope that there is a person on the other side whose story really resonates with them, and they're going to really want to fight for you because maybe they see a little bit of themselves in you. So now that we understand who the admissions officers really are, let's picture them all sitting down in the room together to evaluate your application. How do they go about that, right? And how can we position ourselves in the best way for them to advocate on our behalf? And the first and most important factor that they're looking at, of course, are your academics. For each applicant, you will receive a score on the scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the highest and 5 being the lowest for your academics. In order to attain a 1 or even a 2 on the academic rating, you need to have achieved a 95 or 98% plus in your 11th and 12th grades, on your transcripts, right? If you're calculating your GPA, that would be around 3.8 plus. What's also important is the rigor of your course load. So it's not that you're just excelling in any courses, but you're excelling in the most difficult courses that your high school even offers. And that can be going above and beyond to opt for, say, the IB program or to take additional AP exams outside of your high school. That really demonstrates your academic rigor and your ability to perform on a college campus in the future. In addition to your high school grades, they will also be looking at your standardized test scores, right? To get a 1 or a 2 on standardized testing, you would really need a 1550 plus or a 35 and above on the ACT. And that's really going to indicate you're performing at a very high level according to the standardized metric that all universities have. Besides grades and scores, there's another way to boost your academic rating in the eyes of the admissions officers, and that is by participating in highly competitive international competitions and Olympiads in your subject. So if you are kind of competing at the national or international level and demonstrating a high degree of excellence in mathematics or computer science or whatever your subject is, that's another good way to demonstrate that you are academically a very, very qualified candidate. Finally, if you have engaged in any kind of research under professors at different universities and you've demonstrated an interest in that intellectual pursuit, this will also increase your academic score. If you feel that you are not quite yet at that level of a 1 or a 2, this is something you definitely want to work on boosting, because academics is the first threshold that you need to cross in order to be considered along the other factors like your extracurriculars and your personal. So really make sure that you are in a great position. All of that being said, 83% of applicants to Harvard are academically qualified, which means they do have the scores and they do have the grades. So, are grades important? Yes. Are they enough to differentiate you from all the other applicants with amazing grades? Maybe not. And that's why that brings us to the next factor, which are your extracurricular profile. So let's come to extracurriculars now. And what's really exciting about extracurriculars is there's no one-size-fits-all model for any student, right? There's no formula or template that you can use that's going to ensure a high score on the extracurricular band. What's most important is that you're doing something, okay? You're actively engaging in your community and leveraging your various intellectual and personal motivations to add real value to the world around you, and at the same time demonstrate skill in leadership and in people management and in sort of creativity and all these different factors that colleges are looking for. So in order to attain a 1 or a 2 on the kind of extracurricular score, you're going to want to demonstrate unusual excellence in something outside the classroom that extends beyond your academics to a passion, a project, a hobby, a mission that you're on, or maybe a social cause that you'd like to work towards, and having really gone above and beyond to achieve something tangible and measurable. There are certain contributions that universities are looking for when it comes to, say, leadership positions at school, like being, your kind of class president. But that can also be leader of maybe your school newspaper, or maybe being the head of your music group, right? Whatever it is, you want to avoid as much as possible being a participant, right? Oh, I participated in X activity. Looks very different than saying I led this activity, or even better, I founded this activity that didn't even exist in the first place. I created something where there was a void. All right, so we're gonna get into more about that in a subsequent video to learn how to really create a stellar extracurricular profile, but this is important to keep in mind when considering the overall picture. So now that we've covered academics and extracurriculars, there is one extremely important factor to consider, which is your personal score. Now, it can be very ambiguous and fuzzy as to what this personal score means, right? Like, how do I actually score well in my personality, right? Fortunately, we have a deep understanding of what specific qualities they are looking for in students that they want to accept, okay? So let's get into it right now. When they talk about your personal character, what they really mean is what kind of effect are you going to have on the students around you? What contribution are you going to make in your dining hall conversations, in your study groups, in your classrooms, or even in the dorms, right? Are you going to be a positive presence that will motivate others as opposed to discourage or demotivate them? In order to display your personal qualities, there are a variety of avenues to do that, okay? The most important and powerful tool that you can use is your personal essay and the essays that you submit to your university. That is where you open up about your story, your vulnerabilities, your challenges, your successes, your failures, and really display the journey that you've been on to get to where you are today as a person. But that's not the only factor, right? Your counselor letters of recommendation, your teacher letters of recommendations, your interviews, right? Your alumni interviews that you will do. All of these are ways for colleges to assess whether or not you're a good person and whether or not your character is someone that they really would like to have on their campus. To really achieve a 1 on this score, you should have demonstrated an outstanding degree of character. That can be courage in overcoming really insurmountable challenges. That can be resilience and persistence and grit, or deep compassion and empathy and kindness for those who are struggling in your community, right? So think about ways to amplify these traits that, of course, are already within you so that the human being on the other side of the curtain can really appreciate who you are and invite you to their campus. So the last and final factor that admissions officers consider is your athletic performance, and specifically your ability to perhaps be recruited for a particular sport that you play. This is not as common for students because you would really be needing to be playing at a very, very exceptional level to be recruited for the team. But for those of you who are really interested in, pursuing sports seriously, you can consider going down this route, which would involve like interacting with coaches from the Ivy League universities prior to even applying. Okay. You would need to be competing at likely an international level, representing your state or even your country in your given sport. And you would also need to be playing a sport that the university values and cares about and is going to be recruiting for. So certain universities really care about lacrosse, fencing, rowing, right? Specifically the Ivy League, highly selective elite universities. So if you are successful in those specific sports, you have a higher likelihood of being considered for the athletic recruitment process. But for those of you who are not in that category, don't fret. You still have a chance to, do well and be successful through your academic, extracurricular, and personal performance on these various scores. You are not deducted points for not being sort of a national or international level athlete. So as we draw to a close for today's video, I just want to leave us with a few words from an actual admissions officer that really will hopefully hearten all of you about this entire process. So this is an admissions officer from Vanderbilt University, which is a highly selective institution. And he interestingly stressed this idea of something called positive advocacy, okay? And it's the idea that when reading applications, admissions officers are looking for reasons to admit the students rather than reasons to deny them. Okay, so that means that they're not nitpicking every typo, every spelling mistake, but instead actively looking for signs that a student will be a great fit at Vanderbilt, for example, and building a case to advocate on that student's behalf. So we do think about this process as almost like, a legal case, right? And every admissions officer is making their case for the student that they really want to be accepted. And we want to give them as much material, as much evidence that they can use to build their case to create a compelling argument for why you should be accepted. But I don't want you to think that every admissions officer is going in with this very negative mindset of how they're going to tear a student apart and discard their file. It's really not like that. And hopefully that will give you a little bit of optimism and excitement to put your best foot forward and hopefully strike a chord with the admissions officer who is going to fight for you. That's all for this episode. It was so nice to have you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Signing off as your friendly neighborhood college counselor, and we'll see you later.